Hi, welcome to the second sea trial of the Pufferfish. My first sea trial, I successfully, I think, tested the missile launch capability and the crane and the recovery of it, and went pretty well. Launched a missile on land and shot Jeb about 5 kilometers away out into the ocean. Went out and picked him up, and all worked well. I was quiet through that video. I thought in this one I would test another, kind of test this large loading bay area, the ramp with a large rover, and maybe just go over the operation of different keys and how the craft works in case you want to give it a try. And I think first off, right in the SPH, the crane itself is a cool contraption. I really like the way this turned out. It works very well for me, but it doesn't look like, kind of looks like a strange crane. Looks almost like a teeter-totter or a scale. But the idea is that these hinges are all free swinging. So there's no hinge on here that's controlled mechanically. These are all free hinges. And what's going to happen is when I launch it, because I have this, you notice this piston is extended a little bit. That extra bit of length on this side is good. The weight of it's going to draw this down and this side up. And when this side comes up, it causes the piston here with a docking port at the bottom to come in alignment with this docking port, and I connect the two, and then that actually causes the crane to be assembled and go ahead and launch. And you can see that in action. My idea was to create a hovercraft looking thing, kind of like a military landing craft, hovercraft, but obviously we don't have the rubber apron that would go around the bottom to actually create an air cushion in this game. So, next best thing, the Kerbals have landing gear with, and there you can see it's dropping down just the way it was designed and coming up, right in alignment with the docking port there. But next best thing, we have landing gear as kind of a pseudo hover with very low friction set. So if not functional, at least it feels like a hovercraft. And we're going to go ahead, and this crane's controlled all with translate keys. So we're going to go ahead and use the translate key up down to bring these two together, and you can see they connect right there. And then we'll go ahead and retract this piston, and it pops up into place, and it causes this thing to swing all over the place. But one thing I like to do with robotics in my designs is try to make them usable in a mission sense. And you notice that I'm very careful about what I assign to. I've only got 3 translate keys in addition to the 3 or 4 controlling keys for the overall craft. So I try to use them sparingly and pick and choose carefully. And for the crane, the 3 translate keys, I've got the up down obviously causing this pitch angle, and then I've got forward back that I have on the boom for this one, and then my left right translate key I've got for my swivel. So that gives me pretty good control of the crane, and you can see I'm not stopping and opening up a bunch of windows to control the thing, and it works pretty nicely. Now, one thing you notice is all these hinges, there's nothing motorized. These are all just free swinging. The only thing that's controlling it is this piston, and this swivel. No KAL, nothing like that. So fairly simple. Another thing that you may have noticed is that as I flip this thing in and out, you can kind of see there's a lot of rocking action going on, and that can be a little bit challenging. When I first created this, and I just kind of let that free swing, it was a little bit aggravating trying to pick stuff up because you can see the claw was like flipping around, flopping around all the time. So one thing that I did to try to improve that was I put inside of it one of those little control wheels, and let's see if I do control from here, and then I hit T to turn on SAS. Because it's got a little reaction wheel inside of it, I can if I control from here and turn on SAS, it steadies that motion. And if you go inside, I don't know if I can get in there or not, but you almost saw it right in there. There's one of those little radio control wheels. But now look how that settles things down, because I've got it pointed exactly at the ground, regardless of what angle it takes. Remember, this is free pivoting here. It's always staying vertical, so it makes it much easier to pick up stuff. You know, if there's some bit of control there, so that I thought that was a nice adjustment, and it made it, definitely made it easier for me to pick things up. So, neat little tip for your own crane designs if you give that a try. Another thing is, now that I've got that in there, I can control the pitch. Well, one thing that I noticed was that this thing would flop around so much that this part would actually flip all the way up and get stuck on the top. It doesn't do that anymore, because you notice I made this hinge stop when it got to this horizontal plane. It only it stops. You can see where it stops swinging right there, and that solved the problem with this thing flopping around on top and getting stuck. So that was the other little adjustment that was kind of useful for me. You might also notice, I guess we can turn off the SAS now. With SAS off, you can see how it kind of flips around. The other thing that I liked was, not only is this a salvage claw, but it's also supposed to be a refueling boom. And I didn't necessarily like having a refueling arm that had these open girders in between. So I added these fuel lines so that we've got a line here, then a line there, and the line goes down all the way to the big tanks. So I feel justified in transferring fuel. Now we're going to go back to the main craft. I've got to put the control from here back on my Octo. So control from here. And that gives me a good nav ball picture. I could do control from the helm, but it ends up being the top view, so I don't care for it. So I use the Octo down there to give me the typical view that I'm used to. And now we can go ahead and start up the engine. So I'm going to go ahead and stage on. And when I turn that on, you notice that the blades are at zero. I've got zero throttle, but the blades are going full power reverse. That's because I've set my throttle up so that the 50% mark is neutral. And if we turned on aerodynamics, you'd see that there's no pulling or pushing action going on. And as I increase thrust, you'll see increasing thrust gives me forward, back to neutral, and then decreasing, going down to zero. Zero is full reverse power. So my neutral position on the throttle is right here in the 50% mark. And I have a key 3 that will stop rotation, and key 3 again to release them. But what I wanted to show you here was, if I go very slow forward, these are counter-rotating propellers, so you notice that they both rotate toward the center, rotate them a little quicker. And that negates any negative influence of them both spinning in the same direction. But notice what happens if I go backward. If I slowly go down to zero, you notice that they didn't change the direction. They're still spinning in the same direction. So what's giving me forward and reverse thrust is changing in the pitch of the blade, not the direction of the engine. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hit the 5 key, and that's going to retract my loading ramp, and it'll lock in place with these 2 little docking ports. And then we'll go G to put down the low friction landing gear, the gliding gear, and I've got the lights that automatically come on in a lot of my designs now, so it's got the auto lighting. So we're going to go ahead and we can turn off the aerodynamic forces and we'll give it full throttle, and we'll take it over in this direction to pick up the rover that's sitting over here. So it's got little Junos on the bottom, and you know there's 8 of them. You can see them down there, and they point directly down. So as I'm cruising along, I kind of find it humorous that it's acting kind of like you can kind of see it kind of looks like a hovercraft blowing air around. So, but those Junos do generate electricity, so they help keep my electric up. And I think that's close enough, so we'll go full reverse thrust now, and might as well use the brakes since we're on land. It's low friction, but there's a little bit of braking. And we'll put our throttle in the 50% neutral position, put brakes on, we'll retract the gear to set ourselves down, and key 2 shuts off engines, key 3 locks the blades. Normally I would just hit key 5 and it would deploy the ramp here, but there's a bug unfortunately in 1.8.1, probably was there earlier, where for whatever reason, and here I can show you my action groups. For key 5, the intent is to be able to toggle, so there's the KL1000 that controls the animation of the ramp being deployed. But what I wanted it to do was also automatically undock these nodes, and for whatever reason there's a bug where if you've got docking ports on the same craft, the action group key won't cause them to undock. So even though I've got them here in the key 5, when I hit key 5 you'll notice that they're not going to undock. I'll show you what happens. You hit 5, well here I've got to get that. So you hit 5 and you see it tries, but they're still connected, and if I tried to undock them now, it would undock with such force that it would rip the thing apart. So I'm going to hit 5 again, and that'll put it hopefully back in its starting position. And what I have to do, unfortunately, right now is undock each side manually. Like I said, hopefully Squad will fix that one. That is a little aggravating. I do like the idea of being able to lock my ramp doors in place on my various craft. And now when I hit 5, no problem, it rolls out. So this one is all set, and we'll jump over, hopefully, there we are. I'm close enough to another favorite little friend of mine, Clad. And he helps me test stuff out from time to time, and now we've got the RV-88 Sidetrek rover. Little unique on this one, how you get in. It doesn't have an actual ladder. We got to climb up on this retrieval arm, but it works well, so figured I might as well do that. This one's got a lot of translate keys also on this. I've got one for in and out, one for up and down, and then there's one that actually causes the claw to close, which it's a pretty cool little claw. It can pick up stuff like little tiny fuel tank size things, little rockets and stuff. But these pads, even though they're maximum traction, they don't have like a really heavy stickiness to them. So you are kind of limited with what you can pick up. But I've got the stow. I need to stow this thing, so I've got stow assigned to key 1. So we'll hit key 1, and it'll fold itself up neatly and park it into a position where it's kind of working as a tailgate on the back of my flatbed, and then I'll hit key 6 to bring in the solar panels, and Clad is ready to go. So this was the first craft that I built in my my rescue squad team when robotics came out. It was just basically it's kind of like a robotics test craft. I was testing these servos to try to create active working suspensions and things like that, and obviously to create articulated arms and things like headlights. Yeah, if I hit get the U key here. Yeah, like headlights that would track, you know, with wheels and things like that. And you know, it was a cool little test craft. But you know, in creating this thing, I wanted a high traction vehicle, so I gave it a rather wide stance. So as a result of giving it a wide stance, it you know, there weren't too many. I couldn't use my Mark III cargo bays anymore. So I needed to be able to come up with some sort of a system to carry this thing around. I was thinking a larger size cargo bay. So you know, that's kind of what led to this. But you can kind of see how it's intended to work, and does a fairly decent job of climbing itself out of bad situations and so forth. So it's a neat little buggy, and a good one to test out our cargo bay over here. So who knows, maybe a future craft along the way might have a loading ramp on an SSTO where I can take a larger size rover like this one to some place far off. But I want to be able to test it in the meantime. So this, it also worked with my recovery operations to have something like this in the mix, so I was glad. Well, let's see if I can get it up in there without I think I'm out of energy, so we're gonna have to hit the 2 key. There we go. I let my electric charge run low. So the 2 key in this one turns the engines on, so it just hit the fuel, got the fuel cells going again. And we'll try again. This time maybe with an electric charge we'll actually make it up the ramp. Yeah, that worked. Much better. I'll kind of deliberately park it over here to the side, off center. And that's in pretty good position. And it'll show you how these hydraulic cargo braces are supposed to work. So this is another, rare example where I don't have this signed to a key because I don't use these as often. So I've got, I do have my KL1000 right there that controls these. And what I'm doing is just, sliding this over slowly, and you see what it does. It basically centers it in the middle. And I don't want to squeeze too hard here. The thing will pop. I have on other occasions gone too far and popped the thing. It squirts out like a watermelon seed right out of the bay. So that's pretty good and should hold it. So now I'll hit the 5 key, retract the ramp, and the ramp should lock itself in place. Kind of liked how when it reset up, there's like this dock walk, this deck area where you can walk all the way around. I kind of liked how the deck area came back into line like that. Just kind of neat, I thought. And we'll turn the engines on, so it's key 2. And we'll go to the G to deploy the gear. And my blades aren't spinning, so that's key 3 to let them spin. And we can go ahead and full speed ahead and turn off our brakes. And we'll get out to the water. So this time I just want to take this craft. I guess we'll go over a bump here. Won't take the bumps too crazy. I don't want to damage the landing gear or the nose cones on this. It can do, it can manage impacts in the 20-ish meter per second range, but I try to keep it under 20 meters per second, and that'll get me it's supposed to be like a hovercraft, so we're not going up mountains with the thing, but try not to smash the nose cones too hard into whatever it is you're trying to climb in or out of. You can cause damage. That went fairly smoothly. So now we'll we'll increase the speed and see if we can get up. I think maximum on land speed on this one's about 36 meters per second. Max speed on water is about 26. Possibly with a load, we might see a little bit of a drop off in speed, but not too bad. Our cargo seems to be hanging out all right there. Since I'm controlling the craft with just yaw and throttle, it leaves two controls unused, which would be roll and pitch. And I use the roll and pitch. Roll I use to rotate my little missile launch system, and the pitch, you can see it's causing that to, aside from causing my control wheel out here to go nuts, it controls the pitch on my missile system. Now, if you want to settle this down, one thing that I've done before is I just arm it, and then when it rolls back, you'll see when it rolls back into the girder here, it basically just locks itself, and that solves that problem. So now I've got my pitch control, roll is controlling the swivel, and then the craft itself is just yaw is controlling the directional thrust. So that's pretty much it. Let's when we get to the beachhead here, when we start to angle down, I'll go. That looks pretty cool. The air it's blowing around. I'll go ahead and go full reverse thrust, so I don't hit the water going super fast. We want to hit the water doing, again, 20 meters per second or less. So I'm on full reverse thrust right now. And if I turned on, the overlay, you could see it. And it's bleeding off speed pretty good still, even at a fairly decent incline. And once it hits the water, I'm just going to go neutral on the throttle and let it just kind of cruise in there. And we'll just wait for a second here and hope my poor little laptop potato doesn't die in the process. But once it settles down, we'll start moving. It did pretty good. Let's see what happens if I retract the gear. The gear's coming up. Good deal. So now we'll go back to full throttle. And there's no other rudders on this thing. It's purely the directional thrust of these. And you can see it does a pretty good job moving it around in the water. It's pretty maneuverable. I also like how it throws out those little puffs of air. And in the water, it'll probably get about, like I said, I think about 26-ish meters per second. So we'll let it run. If you want to watch the other video, you can see it shot off a rocket and it came out in the water, and then I was able to pick it up with the claw, and it all worked. And there's these little storage bins on the side, these little rockets and other small things, kind of, the claw can easily drop them in there in these storage spots, and it leaves the main bay open for larger craft or rovers like this one. And there's other storage. I've got some storage bins here for experiments, in these locations, and you can kind of navigate around the deck, and there's little ladders here and there, and fun craft to play with. If you're not having to go hundreds of miles to recover something, or if you got a capsule that landed kind of close, it'd be interesting maybe to try a booster. Recover a booster if you could with this thing, but again, you're moving at about 26 meters per second, so you're not breaking any speed records with it, but it's a neat little thing to play with. So as we come in, I'll see if I can time it to get our gear to deploy so I don't smash my nose cone. So maybe gear down now. And we're set. And I don't know if I want to hit hit going that fast or not. 23 is pretty quick. Yeah, those lights come on automatically. A lot of my craft I've started to do that, where whenever I deploy the landing gear, I also turn the lights on for the landing gear, and it's just one less thing to think about. Well, let's see. This is a pretty steep incline, but let's see how we do. Yeah, not bad. I mean, that's a pretty respectable climb. It made it. I'm gaining speed now, so that was pretty good. We'll get up here on a little bit of a flat land and see if we can get the rover out of it. And call this one done. Let's see. So we'll go back to neutral position on the throttle. So my blades, if I hit F1, you see there's no thrust. And we can go ahead, use the brakes on land, why not? And we'll go gear down. And again, I've got to manually turn the engine off. You might as well lock the blades. And we'll undock that one and undock this one, and then hit key 5. And I'm burning through electric, so for stowed operations where I'm just sitting here waiting to be loaded, I think it's best to hit the 6 key and deploy the comms and solar, and then that should keep my electric charge up. Yeah, there we go. So the electric is charging, and now it's just a matter of unloading the cargo. So we'll open up the Cal editor again, and this time we're just retracting these. Now we can shift over, and let's see, how are we doing on electric charge here? We can hit key 2, that'll turn on the fuel cells. There we go, fuel cells are on, and I'll just back out. And there we go. Not too bad. Alright, well, that worked. Thanks for watching.